What is a decimal? Now, that is an interesting question. It's not very difficult to answer. A decimal is just a really, really small number. So normally, before you were introduced to decimals, the smallest number you could have is 1 or 0. However, we can actually break our numbers into smaller parts, just like a fraction. And coming to that, we use decimal, the word decimal, very colloquially, so very, very casually. The full name for a decimal is actually called a decimal fraction. That's our full name. However, no one ever says, what's the decimal fraction of that? Everyone just says, what is a decimal? So what we need to figure out is what I mean by a small number. So as I said, traditionally, we had 1 or 0 as our smallest numbers. So in our place value, if I drew a place value chart, you could typically say this was the ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and you know the pattern because 10 of one thing makes 10 of the other. However, what we haven't been introduced to yet is the other way. So when we go left, our number gets larger. When we go right, our number gets smaller. And what we need to do is put a decimal point in. So it's just like a full stop, just to tell us when we have whole numbers and when we have parts of whole numbers or decimal fraction. So using our system of base 10, our first place value is actually not called once, as you might think automatically. No, it is called tenths. Now, the reason we call it tenths is because we break up a 1 into 10 parts, and therefore we have tenths. Our next one is hundredths. Now, you'll notice that you might start seeing a pattern here. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Now I'll stay at thousandths, and what you'll see, I'll put 1,000 over here. It's like a mirror to our normal place value system. Apart from the ones, our normal place value system is mirrored. Tenths, tens, hundredths, hundreds, thousandths, thousand, or thousands. So it's a mirrored system. So I bet you know what's after thousandths. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millionths, tens of millionths, etc., etc. So we get smaller and smaller. So we can have very, very small numbers. And you're probably thinking, what do these numbers look like? Well, we start with 1. So I'll flip that over, make it easier. Here is 1. This is equal to 1. I have 1 square. Excellent. Now I move this to the side, just like our place value. And here I have something that goes over the top. You can see it's the same size. Okay. And what I've done here is break it into 10 equal parts. So this is what we call tenths. I can have 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7, 8/10, 9/10, 10/10. I've got 10 equal columns, 10 equal parts. All right, so make sure you have this image secure in your head. So, but what does that really mean? We always compare it to our whole number. So, if I said I had 1/10, cut 1/10 off here, and I compared it to my whole number, I'd have a fraction or a decimal fraction or a part of my whole. One small part. All right. Now you might be wondering, okay, if that's what tenths look like, I wonder what hundredths look like. So let's move the 1 over out of the way, and we move it across. Hundredths are pretty much tenths broken into 10 equal parts. Again, So there are 100 squares. Now, I can count them out for you if you wanted, but I'm not going to. So 100ths, 200ths, 300ths, 400ths, 500ths, 600ths, 700ths, 8, 9, and 10 hundredths. Now I compare that to my whole number. There we go. It's the same size. So if I shaded all of these in, I would have 100 hundredths, or 1. Now, like our renaming, we can rename our numbers in lots of different ways. 1/10, here it is, 1/10, put it on top, is equal to 10 hundredths. What do you think 2/10 equals to? Let's try it out. Cut this down. Doesn't matter where I cut it, but I'll cut it here. So now I've got 2/10 and I place them there. It's covering up 20 hundredths. Interesting. All right. So hundredths is just another way of breaking a number into a smaller and smaller part. Same with tenths. Tenths we break into our number 1 into 10 parts, hundredths into 100 parts, thousands into 1,000 parts, 10,000ths into, you got it, 10,000 parts. So decimals are very small numbers.